Welcome to Mohan Murali GaanaLahari. This is a special show today. I have the pleasure of having Professor Rajiv Malhotra ji here in my studio. Rajiv ji, welcome.
Thank you.
For those of you who do not know who Rajiv Malhotra ji is, I would like to describe him as a soldier for Hindu Dharma. Is that a fair characterization, sir?
Well, soldier is sort of doing a physical thing. I'm doing an intellectual battle. So I'm more of an intellectual strategist, scholar, fighter.
Intellectual scholar, strategist, scholar, fighter. Okay. Rajiv Malhotra ji is a well-known author, and he has written several books, and the most recent of which is Breaking India. And we also have in the studio here Sant Gupta ji, who's also who's a local, and he's the president of local Durga Mandir, and he's also he was on the UN panel for interfaith dialogue, in which he presented the sustainable development from the Hindu perspective. So, Santji, would you mind giving a little bit introduction of our guest?
Sure. Good morning, good afternoon. This is Sant Gupta. So to tell you a little bit about Rajiv Malhotra, he is an Indian-American researcher, writer, speaker, and public intellectual on current affairs as they relate to civilization, cross-cultural encounters, religion, and science. Rajiv ji has conducted original research in a variety of fields and has influenced many other thinkers in India and the West. He has, in fact, disrupted the mainstream thought process among academic and non-academic intellectuals alike by providing fresh, provocative positions on Dharma and on India. Rajiv has written several bestsellers, and starting with Being Different, an Indian Challenge to Western Universalism, Breaking India, Western Intervention in Dravidian and Dalit Fault Line, and most recently, Indra's Net, Defining Hinduism's Philosophical Unity. He is currently a full-time founder-director of Infinity Foundation in Princeton, New Jersey. He also serves as chairman of the Board of Governors of the Center for Indic Studies at the University of Massachusetts, Dartmouth, and as an advisor to various organizations. The foundation has given more than 400 grants for research, education, and community work. The Infinity Foundation has provided small grants to major universities in support of programs, including visiting professors in Indic studies at Harvard University, yoga, Hindi classes at Rutgers University, the research and teaching of non-dualistic philosophies at the University of Hawaii, Global Renaissance Institute, and the Center for Buddhist Studies at Columbia University. I have followed Rajiv ji's work for a number of years, and he has given us a very fresh outlook on what our faith is all about and how it has been treated in the West for a very long time. His ideas are thought-provoking, and we look forward to a good discussion this afternoon so that you can ask any questions about the things that he has written. You can follow him on Twitter, you can follow him on rajivmalhotra.com, and you can get a lot more details about his work, his books, and his thoughts.
Rajiv ji, welcome.
Thank you.
First and foremost, what is Breaking India? Is it a confluence of self-interest forces coming to break India, or is it an outright collusion or conspiracy?
Well, first to go in chronological sequence, I should start with my first book, which wasn't named by anybody. I should. Mm-hmm. It's called Invading the Sacred. Invading the Sacred was a book which is a result of 10 years of battles and debates I had with the Western Academy who study Hinduism. And they make fun of Hindu deities. They say that Ganesh is a limp phallus, and Ramakrishna was a pedophile, had a homosexual relationship, and Shiva encourages rapes. And so a whole lot of what they've done is used Freudian psychoanalysis, which is used for patients, people who have a disease, mental disorder, and they try to Freudian psychoanalyze the Hindu deities and Hindu symbols and gurus and so on. And this became very, very fashionable. And so I took this on as not an authentic representation. And just for the record, I've never tried to block the other side from talking or publishing or writing. Never encourage people to go and try to stop them. What I've tried to do is produce a counter discourse and make it popular. And it is they who've been blocking me trying to speak and so on by smearing and things like that. So that was my first book, and that was the beginning of a large-scale waking up of the Hindu diaspora in this country. Until then, the Hindu leaders in this country, both the political type and the religious type, were not interested in these kind of problems. They were thinking that we're doing very well, we have a lot of temples, everything is going very well. In fact, when I raised these issues, a lot of people said to me, it doesn't matter, why are you raising issues that don't even count? We have the truth inside us and we are so successful. But 20 years later, those are the problems that every Hindu is now worrying about. And I raised them with no help or support, and even after I raised them, people were really not interested in joining this. It took me a lot of running around and a lot of risk-taking, a lot of combating intellectually to get Hindus woken up. So that was an important milestone book. And who are looking for sponsorship and support got it from the West. However it started, the point is now both of them are working together. So both the points that you're saying are working together. So this is exceedingly dangerous to India's sovereignty, India's integrity, and India's survival. And the purpose of this book is to heighten the awareness so that more people can talk about it and start looking for these kind of symptoms and then discuss what we should do as a nation.
To all the listeners and people who are watching on YouTube, I have a small announcement here. We take phone calls on this show. This is the name of the show. For those of you who are first time listening to this show, the name of the show is Mohan Americano, GaanaLahari. This has been a radio show which is on air in Telugu language for the last 7 years, and I have occasionally done interviews in English as well. And I personally, I might need a little bit of introduction here for the new listeners, those who tuned in new. I'm a professor at George Mason University, and I do this as a passion. And with that said, there is a phone number that you can reach us, which is 201-340-1950 and 201-340-1950. And we will take calls a little after 12:30 Eastern. So please stay tuned and have your questions ready. And Rajiv Malhotra ji likes to answer any kind of pointed questions, and he does not back away from a controversy. So please have your questions ready. Rajiv ji, the second thing is you described yourself as an intellectual Kshatriya. Is there a utopian world for intellectual Kshatriya for Hindus and Hindu Dharma? Is there a utopian world where you see this is the ultimate goal of where your battle is headed?
No. I certainly do not see us going back in time to the Vedic past. I'm not one of those who says there was a perfect past and we should go back to it. And there are a lot of reasons it's not practical to do that. The Vedic era population was very small, maybe 2 million, 5 million for the whole subcontinent. So you cannot have 1.5 billion people, 50 to 100 times as many population density, and have the same solutions. There was more water. You didn't need organized, high-intensity industry or farming and things of that sort, and plenty of natural resources and not so much consumption. So unless you want to scale down the population to a very small amount, you really need new kinds of solutions. Plus, people want the modern technology, and I don't believe that Hinduism and Dharma are anti-modernity or anti-technology. So I feel that there is the utopia is not going back to the past. But I feel that to me, the process of going forward is what is important, not the process of going back. And the process of going forward, I wanted to use some of the dharmic paradigms. I want to use some of the Hindu heritage as a solution kit, as a toolkit for sustainability, for environmentalism, for healing paradigms, for spiritual well-being of the person, for mental health, for harmony, for pluralism. There are a lot of solutions that are available in our culture, and the fight I'm waging is that in the name of Western universalism, that the West has all the answers.
I'm part of that system.
And I was raised like that, but I didn't lose I was raised dual. My schooling was in Western thought and Western style, English style education, and I'm a product of success in the United States. But I never lost touch with my culture.
So Macaulay. What do we call it? Macaulay, slaves of Macaulay system?
Yeah, Macaulay, but that's a misnomer because 15-20 years before Macaulay did what he did, Ram Mohan Roy wrote to the British Parliament asking them to come and take over Indian education. This is not well known, but Ram Mohan Roy is the one who started inviting the British to redo Indian education and anglicize it because he thought it was modern and better and superior for us. His inferiority complex is what opened the door. British got very encouraged that this very high-class, well-known, high-profile Hindu has joined us in a sense, and so that opened the door, and then Macaulay comes later. But the product of, we are 150 years after all that, seeing the results of what they did.
You mentioned something like you used a phrase in one of your earlier videos. I don't know which one. I watched some of them. You said you're not against modernization, but you're against Westernization. Is that a fair characterization?
What I say is that we want dharmic modernity, dharma and modernity, like the Chinese have Confucian thought, which is their old traditional, thousands of years old philosophical system, and they're saying we're not leaving that, but we are becoming modern. We're becoming modern without becoming Western. So modern is technology, what we are using now, modern medicine, modern systems, all the things that the modernity has to offer. But you do not have to adopt Western values, and you do not have to take the Western flow of history and say that our history should go in that direction. The problem with Westernization is that Western thought thinks that it is the leader of the world. That was started by the German philosopher Hegel, and he said that where we are today is where we want the rest of the world to be tomorrow. So in other words, we'll always be ahead of you, and where you are today is where we were yesterday. So you are like our past, and we are like your future. So this asymmetry of West being ahead is very dangerous, and it also has destroyed cultures. It has destroyed civilizations, like what they did to the Native Americans, what they did to the Africans, to the pagans. Digesting and destroying anything that is different than them is kind of an expansionist idea, and so I'm against that.
Okay, you mentioned Western values. There is this notion that, well, I subscribe to that notion. Take good wherever it is. Is that the absolute no to Western values?
No, West has got a lot of good things to do. West has huge amount of good things we should borrow. For instance, the Western teamwork, Western compliance with rules is a very important thing. We are more comfortable with chaos and disorder. It's okay, but that doesn't mean that we do not have order. We need a good balance between the two. And the West has good institutions. The institutions in the United States and in Europe are exceedingly good, whereas in our culture it tends to be a personality cult. So when the guru dies or when a leader dies of a party, things fall apart because there is no institution which is impersonal. In the West, Pope can die, it doesn't matter. Pope could have a scandal, he could be thrown out, the church will go on. And that's true of whether it's a Pope kind of a deal or whether it's IBM or whether it's a government. It is not a personality. It is not based on a single personality. So we are too fragile institutionally and too much dependent on an individual personality's charisma, charm, and his ability to hold things together. So there are so many things I can talk about the West, which are very good. But what we are copying from the West are not the good things. We are copying smoking. India is one of the fastest smoking growing countries in the world, while the United States smoking is coming down. India is one of the fastest meat-consuming countries in the world, one of the largest meat-consuming countries in the world, whereas in the United States, vegetarianism is increasing. India is one of the fastest beef exporting countries, one of the biggest beef exporting countries, whereas here there's a campaign against red meats. So, you would find that the West is picking some good habits from India, like vegetarianism, like yoga like meditation, and we're picking some of their bad habits. So that is what concerns me, that Westernization, as has been popularized by the media, and the Indian medical establishment is encouraging people to eat meat because it's good for protein, but the American medical establishment is discouraging from eating meat and asking them to become vegetarians. So, you know, the trade between the two is not an equal trade. We're picking up bad things. The US cigarette companies think Asia is the biggest market for cigarettes, while here there's a lot of pressure to get rid of them and a lot of lawsuits against them because of all the problems they're solving. So in India, this is the result of an inferiority complex. Indians suffer this complex that we are somehow inferior, and to become superior, we got to Westernize, we got to copy. So what they do is they copy the easy stuff, whatever is available in pop culture, the symbolism, and movies and all of that stuff. And the Indians who come back from the West with a thappa, you know, with a stamp, with some kind of a certification, they become big shots in India, and they create this kind of effect. The mimicry effect, mimicry of the whites. I call it white mimicry, which Indians want to do. And that, I think, is the problem.
It's a follow-up question on something you said earlier. Freudian psychoanalysis of deities, you said deities are the followers of the deities?
Both. The deities themselves are considered to be psychotic and something mentally wrong with them. So Shiva, there's a lot of psychoanalysis of Shiva, a lot of psychoanalysis of Durga and the goddess. You know, there's a lot of psychoanalysis of Ganesh. There's a lot of psychoanalysis of Krishna. The book says that because he's standing with like this with his body curved, that these are called cocked hips, so he's a homosexual, he's offering himself for homosexual. This kind of analysis has become very popular. And my book did not end it, but it really put this on the table. And the people who are principal people doing it have stopped doing it, not totally stopped doing it, but kind of become more subtle.
So one of the prominent names that comes up, and you actually had taken her to task, is Wendy Donner.
Yeah.
And could you briefly tell us about what that?
Okay, so Wendy Donner is actually a very well-known scholar. She knows, she studied Sanskrit. You can't say she's a fool or she's ignorant. She's not. She's extremely intelligent. She's not a fool. You can't say she's ignorant because she's studied very hard. She's more learned, knows more about Indian texts than 99% of Hindus do. But the twist comes not because of lack of competence, but the way she's used her competence. Okay, so she's become very fashionable in this Freudian the use of Freudianism to understand Hinduism or to deconstruct Hinduism. So the whole business of turning Hinduism into myth, that it's all a myth, and all these are myths that Hindus are part of. They're trapped in this myth and they need to be saved or rescued from their myth. Unfortunately, it's been taken up by Indian Hindu myth makers like Dev Patnaik. And there are others like that. They're making bestsellers, and a lot of Hindus buying these books and patronizing them. And so the idea of turning our whole civilization into some kind of mythology has become very fashionable. And she's one of the pioneers who started this. So I have taken her on. Never in my life asked that the book be burnt or banned or whatever. I just want that my discourse, which is, I've written thousands of pages, but I've used the internet and I've used blogs and I've used YouTube to get my point across. But what she controls is her friends, her students, her followers have a whole cabal to boycott and blacklist people like me who are an opposing voice. So in important forums, in important media, now why am I talking to internet radio? I'm happy because you're an innovative guy, I'm happy to be here. But mainstream television channels who are discussing this controversy have not invited me. They've invited either Wendy Donner's side or those Hindus who are not well informed, who just have a big ego, who want to go and show off that they are they put their face, but they're not so well read.
Let me guess, is this Fox News?
Well, no, I'm talking about Indian TV also. NPR. I'm talking about New York Times. I'm talking about Wall Street Journal. They've all had articles. Not one of them wanted to hear my point of view. Not one of them contacted me. I've written books on it. I've had 15 years of arguments on it. But rather than saying, okay, we believe in free speech on both sides, they're championing the free speech of one. But by boycotting me, by eliminating me, by coming up with all kind of excuses why we don't want you, they're actually showing that they are against the real spirit of free speech. So I think that this free speech is a hoax. I think that this intellectual freedom is a hoax. It means that the power belongs to the guy who controls the microphone. And if he controls the microphone and says you will speak and you won't speak, and he's got the power, and he may be driven by incentives, he may be driven by
profit,
money, networking,
power,
friends, prestige, ego, all of that stuff, future opportunities. So all this is called free speech. It's a hoax.
So there is one more follow-up question about that.
And I do want to say that thanks to the internet and all the things of the internet, I'm able to say, and I'm able to start this mobilization against the old school media and the old school ideologies.
Okay, one more follow-up question on this, and then we can maybe for 5 minutes open for calls, and then I have other questions to ask you. The follow-up question came up about is when you were mentioning about Western values. In the Western values, you mentioned mentioning about like basically Native Americans got destroyed by the whites who came to this country. And there has been some literature out there. I haven't, I mean, I had to plead ignorance here. I haven't seen a whole lot of that, but there were some people who say, like, in the name of Hinduism, like millions of people have been killed, and Hindus are the most culprit to in terms of genocide. I mean, what do you say to that?
This is so amazing that these people will not allow counter voice like mine to come and debate them. They can, but because they control the channels of information flow, they can say anything, and they can come up with whatever they want to. But this is all nonsense. It is the point is, anytime there is anything, it is blamed on Hinduism. But anytime there's something in the Western world, you don't blame it on Christianity. You don't blame Hitler on Christianity, although he thought he's a Christian and doing something for Christianity. You know, the Christian genocides are not considered to be a pathological problem with Christianity per se. Even Islam, despite all the stuff that's going on, there is a huge attempt by leftist Americans, or leftist Westerners, to say that this is not because of Islam, there's only 5 bad people, there's only maybe 50 bad people, or maybe it's our fault, we're occupying their lands, or maybe they're not rich enough, although they've got the more oil and they're very rich people. So there's always this attempt to not link problems with the religion of the Abrahamic side, of the Abrahamic tradition. But there's a problem of any problem, if there's poor people starving, even though the British may have created this Holocaust, it is because they're Hindus. If there is some issue going on, any issue, whether it is whatever the problems are in India, it is because of their religion is bad. Now this is called atrocity literature. It is a Western term. They created this concept of atrocity literature, and so they showed the atrocities of the Mexicans in order to invade Mexico, that they're a bunch of atrocities. They showed the atrocities of Native Americans, that they're bad with their women, which is not true, and or they're animal sacrificing and human sacrificing, which is not true, as an excuse to go take over the land.
The most recent one is Iraq.
Iraq was based on atrocity literature. The atrocity literature goes hand in hand with invasion. And first comes the intellectual invasion through atrocity literature. And you create like the Jews, Hitler created atrocity literature against Jews. 5 years or more before they started actually persecuting them and holocausting them. So the atrocity literature in India is what you're citing. This is atrocity, and the unfortunate thing is Indians have joined into this atrocity literature development. If you want to read about my views on atrocity literature in Breaking India, I have a lot to say. I've also written a chapter in a book called Beyond Eurocentrism. It was published by Palgrave Macmillan. And I have a large 40-50 page chapter called American Exceptionalism and the Myth of the Frontiers. I'm showing how Americans, thinking they are the exceptional people, have always considered that there are these dangerous frontiers we have to take over, and there are savages living there, and we have to expand and civilize them. Actually, it's after natural resources. They want expansion of land and other natural resources. And to justify that, they've always created atrocity literature. They created atrocity literature in Vietnam. This is a terrorist guy, all bad kind of people, communists, we have to go help them. They created atrocity literature in Korea in the Korean War. In Philippines, all the American magazines and newspapers, mainstream ones, were writing about the horrors of the Philippine culture when the Americans were invading them during the 100 some years ago. So every expansionism, whether it is within the continental United States, whether it is the invasion of Mexico, whether it is overseas, all the way down to Iraq, it is accompanied by atrocity literature of who those people are, and they're a bunch of savages. So we are civilized, they're savages. So this whole business of what's wrong with Hindus has to be seen as part of that range, and Indians are contributing big time to the atrocity literature database of the United States. CIA has this database, so one day if they want to do something and say we are doing it for the human rights, there are women being burned, and there are Dalits being burnt, and there are children who to be saved from child labor, like that, they can turn on, push a button, and CNN and Fox and all these kind of people will be blasting atrocity literature of India for a month. And then there'll be congressional hearings, and then they'll be, okay, we got to put sanctions, and we got to put troops there. If they wanted to do that, that game has been the ground rule, the ground for playing that game has been prepared.
Actually, I do have a question on that one. I want to save that for the last. But for the audience out there, we are going to take some phone calls. Phone number to call is 2013401950. If you are in India, 040 04066778403. 04066778403. I actually forgot to introduce my colleague here. Bhanu, would you come to the front? Bhanu Prakash, for the come to the front of the camera there. So Bhanu Prakash earlier, he has been instrumental in setting up this interview. Actually, Bhanu Prakash. He's a show host in Telugu on Tharanga. He hosts a show on Techie Talk. Actually, he's into Hindu Dharma and quite a bit. Having said that, the phone calls will be taken, and if you have any question on Twitter of Rajiv Malhotra's Twitter account or on Tharanga Facebook group, anywhere you can post the question, and we are going to take those questions. And as we continue with our conversation, we can take one or two calls, and then we will continue with the. We have a caller. Yes, we will take the call. Yeah, Kiran, go ahead and take the call. Yeah, hello, welcome to Tharanga. Who's this? Hello. Kiran, I can't hear you. We can't hear the call. Yeah, we can hear now. Yeah, go ahead. From excuse me? It's a little low. The voice is a little low. Kiran, can you increase the volume a little bit from your side?
Yes, please.
Yeah. Go ahead, sir.
My name is Bharadwaj, and I'm calling in from Cleveland area.
Oh, Bharadwaj, go ahead, sir.
Hi, Namaste, Rajivji.
Namaste.
In fact, I've been hearing a lot about you, and in fact, I read a couple of articles written by you on the Reddit as well. I don't want to take too much of time since this is actually one of the first calls. The only thing I wanted to ask you was, you spoke about Wendy and her book. I see that as more of a symptom than a cause. I feel that the root cause lies somewhere towards the east, right in the Ivy League, Harvard. So talking of the atrocity literature, I feel that people like Professor Witzel, supported by Professor Thapar, Ramila Thapar, are one of the main contributors to this. So if one were to counter, I personally think that that's where that corrective action or a preventive action, whatever you call, should start. What are your thoughts on this?
Should I repeat the question? So the gentleman is asking that if you want to find out, he thinks that the nexus, the central point of all the atrocity literature is one Professor Witzel in Harvard, because he's supporting Ramila Thapar. Well, you see, the point is that when you have a war zone, when you have a Kurukshetra, there are a lot of battles going on. It is not like one ship here is attacking us. There's also tanks, and there's also air force. There's many parts of the war going on. So there are. I would think that this battle on Aryan theory is no longer Witzel. People, this is a 20-year-old obsolete idea, like saying that JNU is the center of all the problems, because in India, there are 20 universities worse than JNU in terms of spreading this kind of knowledge. Those are old ideas. Witzel is depleted. He's not an active publisher. He's not holding great conferences. He's not really. He did something long ago, and so people started fighting him. But you find many people in the American and Western mainstream and in India who believe in these things. And by the way, Witzel did not start this Aryan theory idea. It was started way back in the time of this guy, the German, the famous. Max Miller, yeah, and people have been following this for all the time. And Indian scholars, when Majumdar was toppled by, as a historian, primary historian by Romila Thapar, it was not because of Witzel. And you see the whole Indian left is like that. They believe in this kind of an idea as a class struggle between Aryans and Dravidians and so on. You believe the church is, Witzel is a Jewish guy, he's not a Christian guy. I mean, I'm just trying to say that our people do not have adequate knowledge of the Kurukshetra. We do not have enough understanding of many, many generals that are fighting this on many fronts, using many kinds of weapons. And so Witzel is one guy, he's pretty old now, in his late 70s or something like that. There are a lot of young people into this from the Western side and the Indian side who are anti-Hindu. And then there's Freudian stuff. Then there is this neo-Hinduism. My new book, Indra's Net, talks about this whole school of neo-Hinduism, which these guys have, the people you've named have nothing to do with. These are whole entirely different group of thinkers who have come up with the neo-Hinduism thesis. And ironically, our groups, Hindu groups like Dharma Civilization Foundation, funding these kind of people, sponsoring some of the people who attack the philosophy of Vivekananda, funding some of these people. So the confusion on Hinduism is huge. And therefore, because our people are not well read and not taking the time to understand the big, vast Kurukshetra, they tend to fall into the let's hate one guy, they tend to need a one-liner, one bad personality, one devil kind of person, and everything goes at him. This is a silly idea because firstly it's not true. The problems are many more. The people who are doing these things are far more than just one person. And there are many kind of ideological fights against our culture. And it's also not a good idea because you will not win this way if you if you focus on one person and become very excited about fighting one person, and you really don't want to understand the big picture. So I don't like the thing that all our problems are solved if you go after this Mr. X sitting somewhere. And by the way, in Harvard, he's a non-entity. So all these petitions to the Harvard dean and Harvard president by some of our people are so stupid because he is hardly an entity. He's just almost finished. He's retired pretty much, and nobody in Harvard thinks that much of him anyway. There's many more important people today who are live, active, who are running around and publishing things and organizing things and producing PhDs. When was the last PhD that Witzel produced? You should know. Have you read in the last 10 years any doctoral dissertation that was produced under him? So I don't want you to get carried away in a very narrow battle on with one guy when the problem is actually much wider.
Rajivji, we have two other callers, and Bhardwaj, thank you for the call. And so we have two other callers. Hello, caller one, go ahead.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hi, Rajivji, and hi, Mohanji, and Bhanuji. Namaste.
Namaste.
Yeah, my name is Rachita. I have a simple basic question. I often get confused between people say Hinduism is not a religion; it's just a way of life. And what's your opinion on it?
Well, this business.
Thank you, Ajita, for the call. Yeah.
The question is, people say Hinduism is not a religion; it's a way of life. I don't want to give an answer which I already given because in the book Indra's Net, I explain why this business of way of life is a silly idea. I mean, there is dogs have a dog way of life. So what exactly do you mean a way of life? Eskimos have an Eskimo way of life. Taliban has a Taliban way of life. Al-Qaeda is a way of life. The drug culture is a way of life. The people who are mafia is a mafia way of life. Every living being, any life has a way of life. I mean, cats have a cat way of life, and mosquitoes have a mosquito way of life. So when you say it's a way of life, what exactly do you mean? I mean, you have to tell me specifically what particular way of life qualifies as Hindu. It's not that it is a way of life. To say it's a way of life is like saying a car is a collection of molecules. Well, so is a banana and so is a computer. so to say that a car is a collection of molecules, of course it's true. But what particular collection of molecules makes it a car and not a bicycle? Okay, so Hinduism is a way of life, but what particular way of life, what uniqueness about it makes it Hindu? as opposed to Taliban or Al-Qaeda or Christian way of life, or whatever way of life, other ways of life. So it is a moron answer. It is a really stupid kind of a. I'm sorry, but this business of it's a way of life is for people who do not want to study what kind of way of life it is. You could ask me any question and I could say it's a collection of molecules. If you're asking me about a physical object, if you ask me what's a computer, I could give you a moral answer saying it's a collection of molecules, and I'm not wrong.
Yeah.
So if you ask me what is the such and such ideology, and I know nothing about it, I will say it's an ideology. But what kind of ideology? So it is a stupid thing, and I really take this apart in this book, Indra's Net. I have lots to say on this, why it is wrong. I also criticize this Vasudeva Kutumbakam, and this all the paths are the same and whatnot. You have to. These are. I'm writing a book called Moron Smriti in the future, which is the Smriti on how to be a moron. And I come up with 10 things morons say, and each one of them like what are the popular things morons like to talk about. And this is one of those. That it's a way of life, without being able to answer any further what way of life you're talking about. And Hindus have started without thinking. Just kind of parroting silly things like it's a way of life. It's a quick cop-out for a person who doesn't know a darn thing. Because if you know nothing, you can get away by saying it's a way of life, sir.
Ajita, you got a good answer to give anybody who says that to you. So thank you for the call. We have 2 other callers in the line. Yeah, go ahead. Whoever gets to hail us first will get the dibs.
Hello.
Hello, caller. You're on air. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. My name is Dr. Ismail Penikanda.
Okay, yeah, go ahead. We have Rajiv ji listening to you. Ismail Khan.
Okay. Good afternoon, Dr. Rajiv.
What did we get from you, Dr. Khan?
No, Ismail. Penukonda. Ismail, yes.
Ismail, okay.
Sorry, yeah.
Actually, I come from, I just want to give you a little, I'm an atheist right now, but I was born Muslim, but I come from an area in Rayalaseema in a part of Andhra Pradesh where millions of people who were, I think, Hindu were converted to Muslim, Islam religion at one point of time. If I go back to like 4 generations, I think most of them followed some saint or something like that. For example, right now it's Sai Baba, Shri Sai Baba, maybe that time it's Baba Fakhruddin in our area. But the thing is, they are Hindu at heart, but they practice Islam as a religion for other sakes, like birth, the marriage and all that, death and all that. But what is the scholars, the Hindu scholars think of them? Like the people who were there for thousands of years, born there, the sons of the soil, who were, choose a religion for whatever reason that may be, but who are truly Hindu at heart.
Okay, this is a very good question. I want to summarize and then I want to answer. It's a great question. The gentleman who's asked the question was born a Muslim. He's now an atheist from Andhra Pradesh, and he says millions of people there who were converted to Islam long ago, generations ago, are Hindus at heart. But they follow Muslim rituals and Muslim procedure, Muslim weddings and so on. And these people who've traditionally been Hindus but for a very long time have joined another faith, what do we think of them? So this is, in fact, in the book Indra's Net, I discuss this very thing. I discuss what are the thresholds. What are the thresholds when you stop being a Hindu? What are the issues? What are the ideas which take you away? See, if you can't accept reincarnation, okay, because Islam prevents you from establishing from accepting reincarnation. If you can't accept that there have been many avatars, because of those are not listed in the Islamic book of prophets and so on. If you can't accept that the divine, the supreme being, can also be worshipped as feminine, because in Islam it's only masculine. If you can't accept that you can worship formless, like Allah is worshipped formless, but you can also worship form. We do not have this injunction that that these are false gods and you can't worship them. So if you can't accept any of our deities as forms that we can worship, okay, and if you can't accept the idea of Shakti, is immanence, the divine presence here in the world through human beings, through objects, in everything is a divine manifestation of Shakti. If you can't accept these things, then you know the point is that you do not you are not within the space that you could be saying I'm a Hindu. You may be walking barefoot and wearing saffron and eating pan, and you could be saying I have bindi on and I do bhangra and I do some I have a Hindu name. You could be in the pop culture a Hindu by pop culture, but you are not Hindu by deep culture, and you're not Hindu in the grounding of the things that matter. So you are you see, Hinduism is an open architecture. Hinduism has no problem accepting people who have many different points of view, but the others who are joining the open architecture have to leave it open. They cannot close it by saying we are the only exclusive. We have an exclusivity claim. You can only worship this way. You can only accept this particular history that happened in the Middle East. You can only worship pointing towards Makkah, and no other worship will count. I mean, the exclusivity that comes with certain religions. Typically, the Abrahamic religions have this exclusivity and finality and closure requirement in them because they are history-centric, and I've explained in my books what is meant by history-centric. Because they're history-centric, they tend to be geography-centric, they tend to be deity-centric, they tend to be book-centric. Every one of those is exclusive, one of a kind, absolute. So when somebody from a closed faith comes into this open architecture, they harm the open architecture. Because they cannot accept the open architecture. The open architecture is willing to accept them, provided they themselves are open. So the issue of compatibility between Hindu Dharma and Islam or with Christianity is not a problem from the Hindu side. The Hindu side is willing to say, we'll accept your worship of your anything, even in the temple you can come and do that worship if you want, but it has to be reciprocal. So many times Christians tell me that, okay, why don't we accept each other? I tell them the following: all right, we will put Jesus in the temple as one of the many deities, and you put Durga and Kali and Shiva and Krishna in your church. And they run like that. They can't accept it. So you see, the reciprocity of openness is very important. Okay, and the problem is that so these people are Hindu at heart, but they should understand the point I'm making. They should understand the point I'm making. They should go back to their imams and challenge them and ask them that here we are in a civilization for thousands of years. Our ancestors have been here. That is so open. That is giving us this offer and challenge that let's be open on both sides. Why aren't we able to respect their deities? Why are we required to call them false gods? Why are we supposed to smash their idols because we've been told not to allow that? We don't have to worship them. Let them worship them. Let the Hindus respect their Hinduism. We don't have to convert, but we should respect them. So all I'm asking is that the Muslims who are willing to have mutual respect are, of course, welcome. They are wonderful people, and we Hindus respect them. But the Muslims who are closed, who believe that they have a finality, they have an exclusivity claim, and others are all false, I think they are not really good for the open architecture. So I'm being quite honest about that, and I mean, if you have a comment on this as a follow-up, I would welcome to hear that.
Okay, I think if you have any follow-up, please do say, Ismail. Are you there, Ismail? Dr. Ismail? Yeah, we have two other callers. I think looks like Dr. Ismail is cut off. The call is dropped. Hello, caller, you're on air. Go ahead with Rajiv ji. Hello.
Hello, I'm Pratish Sagar.
Sagar, go ahead. Where are you calling from, Sagar?
As Rajiv ji mentioned that there is a Kurukshetra going on, and there are a lot of pradhans and lot of wars going on. I've read their books like Being Different, Breaking India. I am in the Yahoo groups. I read the Twitters. But what if I want to be another Rajiv Malhotra? What should I do? Because reading these books will only lead me to tackle or debate with my friends or to some extent. But if I want to be a pradhan from the Hindu Dharma side or the Dharma philosophical side, what should I do to be a pradhan? Because I am a guy of an age 29 to 30. But I want to continue all this doing and
Okay, very good. I will repeat the question. This gentleman who is between age 29 and 30 says He's read my books. He's read he's read Breaking India, Being Different, and one or two others, and he's in my Yahoo group. And he's convinced of all this, but he says, how do I become a pradhan? How do I become a leader? How do I become like you? How do I make a difference? Besides just my achieving knowledge for myself, what do I do? So this is excellent. I love to hear such people, and I'm glad that you're inspired to do all this. It depends on, the answer depends on what your capabilities are. You should be consistent with your capabilities. If you are able to organize a forum, if you are part of a forum and you're able to organize a forum.
Can I interrupt you a second?
Sure.
Could you please, for those of you who do not know, who's a pradhan?
Leader.
Okay.
I mean, head. Like Pradhan Mantri is a prime
okay.
minister.
I mean, is there a specific specific label? Okay.
He wants to be a Hindu leader.
Okay.
Let's just put in a general way. The intent, the spirit of, is not the literal meaning, but the spirit of his question is he wants to be a Hindu leader. So how do I be a Hindu leader? He wants to know. So I'm saying that if you are part of a Hindu organization, you can convince your guru. You can convince your guru to invite me. I will like to come and discuss with them how their whole organization can be expanded. I'm not going to argue against their philosophy, their theology, their rituals, their bhakti and all that. I respect that. I respect it for all the Hindu sampradayas. But I can add another chapter. I can add another dimension to their knowledge. And through that organization, I can have a force multiplier and more people can be on this wavelength. So if you are part of a local Hindu temple or a local organization, you can do some work for me by organizing events over there and bringing their senior leaders on the being able to listen to me at least. If you are part of a civic group, a political group, which is open to dharma, open to new ideas, you can talk to those leaders and say, why don't we introduce this kind of a discussion? If you are part of a university and you have some clout and you have some friends, you can ask the university to invite me. So three of the major channels that I feel are very important. One is the Hindu Sampradaya channel, second is the civic group or political group as a channel, and the third is a university or an academic group. If you have access to any of these three, then you can help me get into that particular mode. Then there are people who have resources. There are people who say, okay, I am going to fund and organize the Telugu translation of your works, or Kannada. I mean, I have Kannada people, I have Marathi people, I have Hindi people. So you could take on some projects like that. You could take on a project which says, we will make clips of your YouTubes and make more targeted small message YouTubes, and we create a small group of people who will be doing that and putting them up. You can do that for me. There are people in social media who can help me. You see, there are so many ways of helping. But what I would like is that the person should think where he's capable of helping, so he's not disturbing, wasting time, just making noises for his ego and not able to deliver. You have to be sure where you can deliver. And I have no shortage of people who want to help, but the question is, can they really come through with their promises? So you have to do the soul searching on what your strengths are, what your resources are, and then write to me privately saying, this is a very exact specific proposal, I will make a commitment to it, and then we can take it seriously. Otherwise I get 100 emails a day, literally, offering me all kinds of useless advice or offering me all kinds of help which they can't come through with. Even the most basic thing I ask them to do, they can't do it. So it's a matter of what you are serious about, your level of commitment, and where is your specialty that you can perform.
Let me tag on to that Sagar's question, and that's, what are the inherent qualities of somebody who like to do something and make a difference, in the sense, not necessarily look for leadership, but do what is important? Is that the first thing you...
Yeah, it's a good question, but I would say there's many kinds of people. There's people in the social media who are saying, basically, we want to support you in the social media. And they are very helpful to me. They're getting me a large audience because the mainstream media boycotted me and blacklisted me, and they see me as a threat because I'm countering their icons and their big shot Hindu writers and secular writers. I'm countering them in a way that they can't address. They don't want to debate me. And they can't dismiss me. They can't say that he's some radical guy and he doesn't know what he's talking and he's talking about wrong things, because I don't do that. My books are exceedingly solidly written and they can't counter that. And so what they can do is just sort of ignore me, like I don't exist, because they don't know how to deal with me. So this social media is a very effective weapon which is working, like crazy, and I need help in that. Now they don't have to be a big leader intellectually, they can just help me in the social media. If they are scholarly oriented person, they can help me in my research, in my scholarship. If they are a person who have language skills, they can help me by translating. If they are politically connected or a leader in a local kind of an organization, they can invite me, they can help me in that way. So there's many, I would say there's many types of jobs we have. And many, it's like a huge thing where we need people of many jobs.
Yeah, well.
But there's one other point. What attributes do you anticipate people would have to be the next Rajiv Malhotra?
Oh, I think you need to be an intellectual who likes problem solving. You need to be a creative person. You need to have put aside all your basic life needs, and young enough, not when you are very old, but like in my case, around in my mid-40s, I put aside everything and went to do it full time. This requires full time. You have to be dreaming it. You have to get up in the morning, and until you sleep, you have to be thinking about it, researching. You have to be a good researcher, a passion for reading, a passion for debate, a passion for engaging all kind of ideas, and not be narrowly defined saying I only read these texts because they are my texts. You have to have an appetite, a voracious appetite to read. I go on a plane. Every time I go on a trip to India, I take 3-4 heavy books with me. And this 14-15 hour trip, by the time it's done, I've marked up all the important things. I've typed them up on my laptop, and I'm ready with a 20-page summary and review of each of those 3 or 4 books. And so I've read a few thousand books like that over the last so many years, and I've digested it. I can quote my sources, so when I'm arguing, I can back up my arguments. That is why they know, people who've taken me on, then they know that if you take him on, he'll put even more ammunition, he'll dump out even more ammunition, and eventually those guys run away. And so you have to be somebody who can not just start a fight, but sustain it. Not just be somebody who gives a one-liner and then runs away. You have to be able to stand your ground. You open a war, you have to stand your ground and not run away. So this requires courage.
It doesn't require guns, though.
It requires courage. It requires clarity. You have to be able to take a risk.
Yeah.
You have to be able to say, okay, if I go out and take this stand, people are going to accuse me. People are going to spoil my reputation. They're going to go after my image. But so what? I don't care. So you have to be thick-skinned also and be a risk taker. So there's a lot of different qualities that you need.
Yeah, we will take one more call and then continue with a few other questions I have. Hello, caller, you're on air with Rajiv ji. Go ahead. Can you first tell your name and where you're from, where you're calling from? Hello. Hello.
He's trying to say something.
He's trying to say something. We cannot hear you. Kiran, okay, the call got cut off, and let's have a. Let me continue with a few other things here. Now let's get a little bit deviated from Hinduism, Hindu dharma, and all that to a little bit into the politics of it. You mentioned something about Arab Spring in a couple of days ago in one of your broadcasts,
right?
And you are expecting something similar to Arab Spring, and what you would call is India Spring. Could you elaborate a little bit more on that? And
yeah, I'm worried that you see, you have an old order, and you want to create a new order. But between the old order and the new order is a process of uncertainty, confusion, chaos, dissolution. Shiva. Yesterday was Shivaratri. So Shiva dissolves the old and creates the new, the transformation. Shiva is the transformer from the old stable system to the new stable system, old equilibrium to the new equilibrium. So if India wants to break down the old equilibrium, which is corrupt, which is very bad for India, and majority of India has understood that this old order has to be disrupted. The point is, you do not want to disrupt it, create chaos that you don't know how to control. So Arab Spring was youth people who broke the old order because the old order was corrupt and bad. They broke the old order, but they had no expertise, no management skills, no governance skills to create a new order. So those countries where the Arab Spring happened are neither here nor there. They don't have the old dictators, which they wanted to get rid of, but they don't have a new governance either. So they are basically anarchy, civil war, lot of radical groups fighting each other. The nation is being taken apart. All these countries are falling apart. So it's a great opportunity now for Westerners to come and intervene in the name of human rights, and the Russians want to come, Chinese, all the Arabs, everybody, all the neighboring countries and other world powers want to intervene. and these countries may be broken up. They may be in the next generation lost fighting each other. So I don't want India to end up like that. This means, you know, Gorbachev was against the old guard, but was not able to keep control of the country after he started these forces to unravel the old guard, old way of Soviet thinking. So the country fell apart. The country broke up. So India faces that risk of ideologues and young people with good intentions breaking the old system who do not know how to control and put together a new system. Which is why I think Modi is a very unique kind of a person. He can disrupt the old system because he's a tough guy, but he also has governance expertise to create a new system together. And this is the reason I like these Aam Aadmi Party ideologically. They're very nice, they're very well-meaning, and one part of me likes that, and I hope that they are successful in a local state level, so that in 5 years they could be worthwhile at the national level. But I think they're not ready for the national level, because right now in the national level it would be a kind of a disaster. Can I take a call?
Okay. Yeah.
Hello.
I'm
on the air. Are you asking me a question? Well, I'm on the air. You can tune into my show.
Okay. So somebody who had your phone number and was able to ask. Okay. Well,
asking them to call in here.
Okay. The person who just called Rajivji, you can call this 201-340-1950. Actually, I wanted to get to some of the questions I have. We have a couple of questions. Facebook. One from Facebook. Bhanu, can you come close to the microphone and ask that question? Yeah.
All right. This is from Nitin Sridhar, and his question is, how do we revive this Indian education system for the sake of creating Indian narrative?
Okay.
And he adds that, like, our Indian narrative is Mimamsa, Sankhya, Veda, Vedanta. And how do individuals can contribute in these fields?
Let me also ask that. I have a question on that one, so it's going to slightly deviate from the politics, but we'll get back to politics. The Hindu narrative, and you mentioned something like the great Indian narrative. So let's say, are you saying like Hindu and India is the same, or is that the message here? Hindu narrative and the great Indian narrative. So are one and the same. And the second, what is that great narrative?
Yeah, so I've described this also. I call it the open architecture. To me, what is distinct and unique about Indian civilization, Bharati Sanskriti or civilization, is it's an open architecture where many kinds of people, many languages, many ethnic groups, many ideologies, many ways of worshipping, many ideas of divine, male, female, no form, whatever, all these are allowed. So it is the most open system. So you can call it by whatever name. I call it open architecture. In this book, I say, okay, now let's not give it brand names because then people get biased. Let's call it an open architecture. It's like the internet. But on the internet, you cannot be somebody who's subverting and sending out viruses and trying to bring down other people, because then they should throw you out. So on the internet, you can do anything you want except bring down the internet. You can't be defeating the internet and be in the internet. Otherwise, it's self-contradictory. So anyone who respects the openness of the internet is welcome. So similarly, in this open architecture, the only people who are culprits who ought to be gotten rid of are those who are trying to bring down the open architecture by being closed, by being like a cancer that wants to spread and force everybody else onto their wavelength. Okay, and that is what I call adharma. So for today, my definition of adharma is anyone who wants to subvert and disrupt and destroy the open architecture. So to me, the Indian narrative must start by appreciating this is like the core engine. This is like the engine inside. This is the central idea of open architecture as dharma, and anything that is closed architecture, expansionist, exclusivist, is adharma.
So let me put a couple of words in your mouth in there: tolerance and acceptance.
Mutual respect.
Mutual respect.
Yeah, tolerance is sort of okay, but not good enough. Like, I tolerate you, but that doesn't mean I respect you. You wouldn't like someone to say, you come to my house and I'll tolerate you to sit and have dinner with me. You'll say, what the heck is wrong? Why you have to tolerate me? I mean, imagine in the office, you tell your colleague, I'll tolerate you to sit there. Or you tell your spouse, I'll tolerate you in the house. That's not respectful. It is disrespectful. So the word tolerance is a Christian word because they were actually each kingdom in Europe had its own denomination, which was a law. They had one particular kind of denomination that you had to worship in. We joined this particular church, and people who joined another church were banned, and it was considered criminal. So that exclusivity, they decided to have a political treaty and a military treaty between two kings, saying, I'll tolerate your people in my kingdom and you tolerate my people in your kingdom. It was more like kind of putting up with you.
Yeah,
We're not going to kill you, we'll tolerate you. But we need to go better than that. We need to say that we need to have, so in my book, Being Different, I explained that tolerance is not good enough, we need mutual respect. So the open architecture is like that.
Okay. So in terms of great Indian narrative, I remember you mentioned the other day about having, you said there is this Western narrative is that they imbibe a lot of the Western narrative imbibes the very young about the history, culture, and art and everything. So I actually wanted to, I don't know where I put the quote, most recently I saw the movie, was it The Monument Men? In that, you saw the movie?
No, I haven't seen it.
So actually there is, you probably will enjoy this.
Yeah,
like you have some very good lines in that, and I was thinking about those lines when you were when I was watching your video on that. It says like when Hitler decided to destroy, he just collected art, and then his sole goal is to destroy all the people he conquered, and is as if those cultures did not exist and all that. In that context, they say why it is so important about these monuments and museums and why people have to relate and all that. So is that something?
So let me just tell you, I haven't seen the movie, but actually Christianity has done that. Christianity has destroyed so many places where it went. The Native Americans, the huge cathedral in Mexico City, which is one of the World Heritage sites, huge Christian cathedral. When they were doing some basement renovation, they found that it was built on top of a Native American temple. So it reminds you of the Ram Mandir issue.
Okay.
Yeah. So the church was built on top of a Native American temple, which was a pagan temple. So now when you go to this huge cathedral, on the side it says, they don't give it much publicity, but on the side it says if you want you can go down and go down the steps, and they'll give you a guided tour of what this huge temple was. You can see the foundations of that old temple, on top of which the cathedral was built. So this is a symbol of what has happened, how Christianity has spread. And similarly Islam. The point is, why are there so many great Hindu temples in south but there's nothing in the north? When you see so much of our culture from the Vaishnav culture and the Shaivite culture all in the north, so much, where did all those things disappear? And you keep finding that archaeologists, once in a while when they dig very deep, they find some Shaivite thing, or when they find some old goddess thing here and there. Obviously these are conquered lands that have been eradicated from the past. So why does the Abrahamic religion have to eradicate the past? Because of this I explained in the concept of history centrism and the concept of exclusivity and the concept that God is outside and is not inside the world. He's not immanent, but he's transcendent, and therefore he has sent only very few prophets. These prophets are finished. They're not going to be coming anymore. The lineage of prophets is closed, and we have the particular book of what this is about, and only we can then tell you. So this kind of an exclusivity, we don't have that, because God is immanent everywhere. Therefore, new rishis keep coming, new people keep coming within insight. So we have modern people. We have Raman Maharshi. We have Sri Aurobindo. People can follow. We have Ramakrishna. So we have an ongoing refreshing of the knowledge, because we are not limited to a closure of historical prophets. We have an ongoing enlightenment potential. That's because all of us have such Chitanand potential in us. So there is a metaphysical and cosmological and philosophical difference. So the religions of the Abrahamic philosophical idea will not be able to accept those who are not fitting their idea. They can at best put them in a museum. Museum, it means you're dead, and now we'll stuff you and preserve you and put you in a museum. Now Mohan wouldn't like that. None of these guys will like to be put in a museum. You want to be living. So India doesn't have a museum need, because we never put people dead, kill them, put them in a museum, because they are living. They have a living culture. They have their own temple, their deity. You go to any part of India, there will be a little goddess mandir. I went to Tamil Nadu, Nagapattinam during the tsunami. I went to all these places. Even the ones who converted and whatnot, unless the church comes and after a while the church comes and want to throw out all this stuff. But secretly some guy in his house still kept one. You know, so and you'll find that even though they don't know what it means because of this idea of secularization, the education, they've killed the actual practices. But they still respect a place. If you tell them, I want to see your deity, they will, after they trust you that you're not some kind of a human rights guy who's going to make fun of them. After they start trusting you, they take you to their deity. And then you tell them, explain it to me. Then they'll be very shy, they'll say, we don't know. But then some old guy will come and tell you what it is. Yeah? So this India has been a land of all kind of deities. Every village got a village deity who protects that village. And that is what their sense of identity is. Now this living faiths of huge pluralism you do not find in the Abrahamic religions. They can at best turn this deity, freeze it, and make a monument out of it, and make a museum out of it, but they cannot. There's no active worship going on.
I'm not necessarily everything religious. I mean by monuments and all that. So what about cultural? So people, writers and poets and kings and all the intellectuals.
Yeah, I think that they really have done a very good job of creating a grand narrative of history. Like you go to Washington, you see all these monuments. You go to various state capitals in the United States, you see monuments. The big parades in this country are very patriotic. So the symbolism and all of that, with a lot of exaggerations. The grand narrative always has a lot of exaggerations. And the founding fathers and how great they were and all that. It's part of the American grand narrative, and there's absolutely no doubt that they've done a very good job. I commend them for that. Every nation has a right to do that. India needs to do that. But India has not done that. Because the intellectual valas in India are they have the inferiority complex. And when I talk about what is the Indian grand narrative, I'm not pushing a grand narrative on them, I'm asking them to think about it. Many of them are scared of the question. I find that a lot of people in India, the intellectual types, especially on the extreme left, they're very scared of her because they haven't answered it. They haven't figured it out for themselves. So they start accusing you for asking a question.
Yeah, on the same subject, I come from the state of Andhra Pradesh. What was the state of Andhra Pradesh?
What is it now?
I don't know. I don't know. This is the identity issue. So having these symbols, the cultural icons on Tank Bund area.
Yeah.
And in one December, I think it was a December sometime. So they kind of had very pre-planned, well orchestrated. So a bunch of thugs. They would like to call them freedom fighters or whatever whatever the narrative they give, but I call them a bunch of thugs. So under no cameras, all these cultural icons have been destroyed with very pre-planned way.
Why have they done it?
I mean, I just want to know if you followed that. Why would you think that is? I mean, what do you think of it? First?
Well, I think if people are destroying cultural icons, maybe they are threatened by what those icons represent, and maybe they represent a certain cultural continuity which they are threatened by, and they want to create a new, new history, and so they want to erase the evidence for that. So that is probably why they would do it. So people who are intolerant are the types who would destroy what is there. I think it would be very un-Hindu to go to any place and destroy their deity or destroy their local heroes or their sense of who they are. I think it would be very wrong.
Okay. Well, I don't want to belabor that point because that has been a subject that keeps coming on my show quite a bit, Andhra, Telangana. So let's get back to the politics of it. The coalition parties, you said, I don't exactly remember the conversation you had earlier on this one, but center versus states. This is something I believe that too much power in the center is not a good thing. So what are your thoughts on it?
I agree with you. I think that the state should have more power. I think the center should control things that keep a nation together. Currency, foreign policy, military, these kind of things. Center should control. But give the states a lot of autonomy, a lot of freedom, as long as they're within the Constitution of India. They're not doing anything unconstitutional or provoking, hatred for each other. There should be a certain decency towards the nation and towards the unity of the nation and towards India's grand narrative. They should have a thing like that. But then within those overall broad ideas, they should be able to function autonomous. They shouldn't have to go to Delhi for permission to do this or that. Certainly, business, commerce, economic relations, those kind of things the state should be able to pretty much do on their own. And right now the taxation is a very big control the center has, because you pay tax to the center most of the time, and then the center allocates the money to the states. Yeah. Here the states have to raise their own taxes for budget purposes, state budget. So I think it should be like that. The center should only raise the taxes it needs for center's projects, but the state should raise their own taxes. That way they don't have to depend on the center. Right now there's politics. If the state government is run by an opposition party compared to the central government, then they will not be favorites to get the money. And so through control of the money, they can manipulate the democratic process and the vote banking, which is all unfair. You want to give states their own political freedom, their vote banking freedom kind of thing, and their own financial freedom, but they should operate within the integrity of India as a country.
In terms of small political parties, regional parties, what is your opinion on that?
Well, I think that too much fragmentation is dangerous, because you have a very difficult consensus process when there's a lot of people who have to sit around the table and reach a consensus. Ideologically, yes, it makes sense that a lot of people, everybody's voice is considered, but then, as you know, from any enterprise, if your committees are a huge number of people sitting on a committee, you never get anything done. So a large part of India's problem is that to keep these coalitions together, a huge amount of energy of the government in power is spent just keeping the coalition together, keeping everybody happy. And then the little parties know that they have a lot of power because they can do something and bring the government down. So this encourages corruption. So somebody wants to be railway minister, somebody wants to be this ex-minister, Y minister, in exchange for the support he'll give. And the reason he wants to be the minister is not because he's an expert in that area, but because there's corruption opportunity. So briberies and corruptions are one of the motives that bring little parties to exchange their support for some power, and then that power can be monetized. You can monetize the political power into corruption opportunities.
Okay.
You have a call?
No, we didn't have a call. So okay. On the same thought, the center versus state rights versus regionalism, or the regional identity, or the linguistic identity. These are the things that keep coming up prominently in the backdrop of Telangana, separate Telangana agitation. We're all the same. Integrationists say. Everybody knows, my regular listeners know that I'm an integrationist, and I say, like, we are the same people, so we should be together. That has been my stance forever. And no, we are different. We are different in this, and from my perspective, they are not the differences that they really were not there, and if they were artificially created for political gains. That's my point of view. But what has happened in terms of this is, in my opinion, has far-reaching consequences for India in what happened in Andhra Pradesh in the last. I'm sure you've been following what is happening in there. So far-reaching consequences, something like. Yeah, it was done for political expediency, or the electioneering, or whatever you want to call it. That's nobody with everybody with an iota of sense would realize that Congress party has broken the state to gain some MP seats in one part of the state. And even the person who's behind this split of the state is saying, "Oh, I don't believe in it. I did it because Sonia Ji told me to do." Jairam Ramesh, that's what he was saying. So in general, this breaking up of Andhra Pradesh in the manner it was done, and what is your take on it?
Yeah, I think that the problem in India all over the place, and maybe this is the latest evidence where it's happening, is that to be corrupt, I need to have a local vote bank. Then I can go trade it in and do a transaction and get some power out of it. And to create the vote bank, I have to show that this group of people, I'm going to represent you. You are victim. Somebody else is oppressing you. India has oppressed you. Some caste has oppressed you. Some Aryans have oppressed you. Some group people from another state have oppressed you. I have to show that you are victim. This idea of championing victimhood is a very negative thing. It's a very dangerous thing, because you have to it's negative. You always have to do it by showing atrocity literature. It is India's own atrocity literature against other Indians. This is the problem. So local vote banking thrives on constructing atrocity literature against your fellow Indian. And the more successful I am, whether I'm a Yadav somewhere, whether I'm whatever Mayawati somewhere, or whether I'm Jayalalitha, or it is all the same. I have to convince my constituents that you are different because you're victims. Those guys are the problem. I'm going to save you. I'm going to protect you. I'm going to champion you. I'm going to get better deal for you. So all the problems, all the poverty, all the issues that local people are facing can be turned into some kind of a manipulated history that shows that, you know, others are to be blamed. And then the person gets power like that. And this is probably one example of this sort of process going on.
No, I understand that it is an example and it is vote bank politics. There is no doubt. But what is the end result of this process? Like
it will go on breaking up and breaking up, because if you have then in Telangana there will be some guys wanting A versus B and break it down further. You can keep bifurcating. And you know, even these states in India are tens of millions of people. There's large states, so you can keep breaking them, because you know, you take a state, you break. I believe in small states for governance purposes, for practicality of governance purposes, not for ethnic violence or for ethnic conflict. It should be, you need small states because they're easier to govern, but you do not need to break them up on the basis of some kind of animosity with other people.
Is it fair to assume that you're against the way it was done?
I do not. Well, first of all, I'll say I'm not. This is a topic I have not kept up on, and I probably should read up on it. And I prefer to take on very strong. I take strong stance, but I do it after reading and studying a lot, all the positions. I haven't done that on this one. So I'm giving you my general thoughts and my positions, but I haven't really studied honestly on this.
So my what, if you want to call it an intellectual argument on this one, is breaking India, and you see external forces, and I see internal forces.
And they're both there.
I see the internal forces are much stronger in breaking India than
in certain places, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe in this example they're stronger, but in the Maoists somewhere are getting a lot of help from Nepal, which is linked with China now. And I know that this whole in the south they are getting a lot of some of these ideologies, be they left-wing ideologies or right-wing ideologies, are imported. Northeast is certainly a lot of stuff coming from Bangladesh and China and Western churches in the Northeast. The three great civilizations of the world, the West, China, and Islam, are competing for the Northeast. Northeast is the crosshairs of these. It's the war zone.
So we can take some more calls.
Actually,
so
one question
from Facebook.
Yeah. It is Nitin's, the same thing.
Yeah.
He basically said you haven't answered him, which is how do we create Indian narrative in the current education system?
Yeah, I answered his question. Okay, so in the current education system, you will not be able to create it. So what you need is an HRD minister who understands the importance of the Indian system. And I would not want to throw out the current system. I would want to add more subjects. I would want to change history, how it's taught. I would want to include comparative religion, not promoting one religion over another, but teaching them what it is, so that people can have facts and they're not manipulated. I would want to introduce yoga, meditation. I would want to introduce our values, Indian traditional values. I would want to and I would want places where people can go, IMAX theaters where they show you this in an entertaining way, monuments. I would want a lot of not just classroom technical, theoretical knowledge, but online stuff and places where kids can go and get inspired. But so I would say that these are things which are visionary. Individual can do only so much. A lot of individuals are trying. You have various Hindu organizations and various other kind of organizations starting schools here and there. But to really change the nation, you have to change the media thinking. You have to change the civil services thinking. You have to change how Indian foreign service people are trained, how IAS people are trained, what sort of knowledge they get about India. You go to some of these Government of India sites, they're talking about Aryan theory. You go to who gets these presidential awards, these Padam Shri, Padam Bhushan type awards. Many of them are being given to Western scholars who are Aryan, Dravidian divide kind of people. They're getting awards. Government of India awards. So, the government is actually championing a certain idea, which is a breaking India idea. The government, through the kind of awards it gives, is championing it.
So there is.
I would say that Government of India after independence has done more harm to the sovereignty and integrity of India in terms of its narrative, in terms of its culture, in terms of its intellectual unity, done more harm than the British did.
Which specific government you mean? Which prime minister?
I would say all of them. I don't think that the BJP government did much that was sustainable to along the lines of what I'm talking about. I think that I don't want to say that they failed, because all I can tell you is that other than making India a nuclear state, official, it was already a nuclear state. It's not that they made India a nuclear state, but making it honest and open about it, which is not reversible. It is irreversible. Once you've done it, you've done it. Other than that, I don't know what they did, which wasn't reversed. And there are things you can do, such that even if you lose power, you can't reverse. But they didn't do those kind of things. So so there's nothing sustainable today which you can say it's their accomplishment. Okay. So I think that governments in general have not been able to do it.
They took it up on the textbooks, changing the textbooks.
Yeah, but the way it was done leaves a lot to be desired. And how to change, what are the first areas to change, where do you tackle it? You need to, your first line of fight has to be such that you have a high chance of winning. And then it has to allow you to open up for the next fight. So instead of starting with, for instance, in the colleges, instead of starting with let's teach astrology, they should have started with let's teach yoga and brought the medical establishment of the whole world on their side. They would have gotten much more success if they brought in our tradition and our values through the health benefits of yoga, like Ramdev is doing, and put that into the whole system and say everybody must learn that. Once they've started learning that, then once they've got the health benefits, then you can take them to the next step.
Actually, there are a couple of callers. We'll get to that. Get to 1 second on the yoga subject. So there has been Fox News. They went on a rampage against yoga as some kind of a Hindu imposition on Christian faith or something like that. So we will get to that a little later. We have a couple of callers on the line. Hello, caller, you're on air. Go ahead with your question to Rajiv ji.
Hello, this is Sanjeev.
Yeah, go ahead.
Namaste, Rajiv ji.
Namaste.
I'm a big fan of yours, and I've read all your books. Just not.
Who's calling? What's your name, sir? Where are you calling from?
Sanjeev. This is Sanjeev. I'm calling from Bangalore.
Okay.
Sanjeev from Bangalore. Welcome, Sanjeev.
Thank you, sir. So, actually, I have been reading Upanishads myself, and I have I'm on the same line, sir. I'm too small to say that, but it is great to be interacting with you. So, when I went to the last Mahakumbh, actually, I found out the thing which is really great, but I think it's lost in the modern world. That is, we used to have Shastras over the text, and we used to do a lot of modification as to what needs to be done. So, with your kind of knowledge, I just wanted to put across a point wherein I know that most of us would like to get into the same lines of knowledge as you, but many of them are lazy enough to read the books and this entire gamut of books. So is there a possibility that maybe with the help of internet like the Twitter or the Facebook, we could organize a Mahakumbh of a knowledge sharing session? Because I believe that when we do Shastras, a lot of people with their kind of confusion, it comes up, and then with you as the sitting host, maybe I'll write you in private over emails or something. But
I'm very impressed. This is a very good idea. A Mahakumbh on the internet. So why don't you write to me and volunteer? I'll be there. You invite me. I'll be there. But you organize it. You do the tech work. You write to me, and you must then make sure you come through and not just talk about an idea and run away. Now, I have a tweet that needs to be, he says that, can you please ask Professor Mohan to repeat the number one more time? So maybe somebody...
So, phone number is 201-340-1950 if you're calling from United States, and if you're calling from India, 040-6677-8403. Here is a funny thing about it. Already phone companies have started charging roaming in Andhra and Telangana.
Oh my God.
So this is really hilarious. Anyway, so even if you are calling from the one part of Andhra Pradesh, so if this is a Hyderabad phone number, 040-6677-8403. And in US phone number 201-340-1950. So yeah, you go ahead, Rajiv.
So the question.
Although you answered that.
I answered the question. He wants a Mahakumbh online.
Oh, okay, you already answered. Okay, we have another.
Very interesting.
We have one more caller.
We have one more caller. I have a funny take on it later on. So, caller, go ahead. We have another caller.
This is Virendra. I'm calling from Phoenix.
Okay.
Hello, Vijay. Wonderful to hear from you.
You often talk about grand Indian narrative. So, is there an idea with you that to approach government to put something like that in execution, especially assuming that Modi is going to come into government?
Okay, so the question is, have I put a proposal to the government to put something into motion along the lines of my Indian grand narrative kind of a vision, and especially Modi into power? You see, the thing is that I've been championing this for 20-25 years. I have written a lot. I have a lot of proposals, a lot of ideas. If invited, that I'll underscore, I'll be more than happy to do my part of it. I do not want to lobby. I'm not a politician. I feel uncomfortable going and trying to, work my way through some very complicated system I don't understand. I'm not a party insider of any party. And you see, the thing is that there's petty politics in every party. There's people who want to be important. There's people who want to outsmart you. There's people who want to take your idea and move it forward for their own progress and keep you out of it. They're threatened by you. So all this jumping around, running around, politicking is there in every large corporate organization which I worked in. That's why I left the corporate world to go out on my own, because I could not stand this corporate politics. And this is also party politics. This is also in large religious establishments of every religion. There's politics among the people to vie for position, jockey for position, to try and climb upstairs. So I don't want to be part of that game. I will not subject myself to running around trying to lobby that I have to do this or I have that idea. I am a thinker. I'm an independent thinker. I will remain that. I will continue my research, writing, and publicly championing the ideas that I have. If somebody wants to benefit from my ideas, if somebody wants to invite me, a government of any kind, I have not closed the door, never closed the door to the present government. If they wanted to invite me, plenty of those people know me. I mean, I have known some individuals who are in very high position, who even like my ideas, but said in the current government, who said that they can't afford to take the personal risk and stick their neck out and champion these ideas, but they privately agree with me. So there are people who support these ideas in all sorts of parties. But as far as I'm not going to be getting into the dog fight, because it is a dog fight to pull an idea through or to put an individual through. I will not do that. And so if none of this happens, then it won't happen. But others can champion. I mean, it is for the Hindus who are interested in these ideas to do some of this championing of what the right ideas are and so forth. I have not done anything of my own to position myself or put forth a particular concrete proposal of any kind, and nor do I intend to do so.
Okay. We have a couple of more callers, but before we take the call, I want to put a plug in here for Tharanga. For those of you who are new to listening to Tharanga, Tharanga has been operating as an internet radio, and we do a lot of other social media. We have a lot of social media presence. Actually, we are integrated internet radio and social media through an app which can be downloaded from Play Store. Actually, our iPhone app is not as robust. We run channels in Telugu and Hindi, and of course, as you can see now, even though this is Telugu only, I mean, most of my shows are on Telugu only, but as and when the situation needed, we do shows in Hindi and English as well. Actually, we do have a separate Hindi channel, and this Internet Kumbha, the knowledge transition. This is not like a one concentrated effort. This is essentially a whole bunch of intellectuals do a lot of intellectual shows on this one. With that shameless plug has been done, so we'll take a couple of calls. Hello, go ahead, caller, you're on air. Hello?
Hello?
Yeah, go ahead.
Hello?
Yeah, go ahead, sir. You're on air. First, tell your name and what's your question.
Okay,
My question is why there is a brain drain from India and why governments are not taking any steps to prevent that brain drain.
Okay, what's your name and where are you calling from, sir?
My name is Venkat. I'm calling from Bhopal.
Bhopal, okay.
Okay, so Venkat from Bhopal wants to know why is there a brain drain from India and why is the government not doing to stop it? I think the thing is that if the Indian education system improves and there's more research opportunity and there's more meritocracy, less corruption and less petty politics involved, people feel they have more freedom, then people will want to work in India. But I think that the brain drain is not as much a problem as it used to be. But now there's a lot of brain returning to India. A lot of Indians have returned back to India, and I think what you're calling brain drain can also be seen as a brain development. It's the brains are being developed in foreign countries because a lot of the people who go, they have access to laboratories and research and so on, and many of them do things and come back. So in this global economy, there's be people traveling back and forth. India must be a knowledge society, knowledge economy, knowledge exporter, and it therefore needs world-class institutions like Nalanda, Takshashila, all these kind of places were at one time, so that it is as prestigious as Harvards of the world and bringing people, not only for Indians staying in India, but also people from around the country, around the world coming back to India. It is sad that in the ranking of top 100 universities, you don't find Indian university. Now, some of them complain that the ranking is unfair. Maybe it's unfair, but even if the ranking were different, only a few might make it. You go to IITs, they're not doing research, they're just teaching. I was recently at IIT Kharagpur, and the students there told me, they agreed with my description that they're training you to become tech coolies. I use the word tech coolies. That, you know, even the biggest tech companies in India are not really producing the original software. We do not produce these apps. We did not produce WhatsApp, for example, with 50 Ukrainians on food stamps did it. I mean, out of the top 100 apps on iTunes and the top 100 apps on this Samsung platform, the Google platform, you do not find that many Indian manufacturers. But we are the bricklayers. We are the bricklayers. Like poor people from a village come to Delhi and they make a house for a rich man. They are bricklayers, and when the house is made, they don't own equity in it. They do not own the single brick which they have laid. They go back to the next job and the next job. So they are people who do not own capital of their own. And similarly, the people in India sitting and working for Microsoft or working for any of the great Google, they don't own equity in those things. So Infosys, people like Infosys are a large supply. They are doing labor arbitrage. They are taking lower price labor and selling it to a high price market and making money for themselves. And a few small number of them become billionaires. And we think they are big shots, but actually it's no different than if somebody were bringing cheap labor from a village in India and selling drivers and maids and selling cheap labor to a big market in Delhi or Bombay, and they could get a cut out of the margin of labor rates, and they can end up becoming very rich. But they are not really doing original work. So I think that we have to learn from China. They also started with low wages arbitrage. They started with that in the manufacturing sector. But they didn't stay there. They went up the value curve, and they now started taking over the PC market and with their own brand, Lenovo. And now they are taking over more and more consumer electronics market. They are soon going to come with an electric car and take on the American electric car people. So they are not just content being cheap factory workers. They are creating their own original brands and getting into the international market in a very systematic and a very powerful way. You will see in the next 10 years, Chinese brands taking over many, many kinds of markets. So India hasn't done that, and this is an inferiority complex that we are not good. Everything comes from overseas. The Aryans came from somewhere else and brought us Sanskrit and Vedas. Then the Greek came and brought us astronomy and philosophy and mathematics. And then the Muslims came and they brought us sitar and chicken tikka and tabla and they brought us Taj Mahal. And then the British came and they gave us railways and they gave us mathematics and they gave us cricket. And now the Americans will give us human rights. Okay, this is I call this the invasion theory of India. And the reason people don't like my grand narrative project is because it devastates this invasion theory of India. It says that we have our own narrative. And it is not a narrative of foreigners coming and fixing us and improving us. And now one lady in one of these very high-flown Indian think tanks in Delhi, when I was talking about the Indian grand narrative, her counter position was that, we have all these problems and so many people came and invaded us and did so much for us, but we still have these problems, sir. So I said, then what you are really saying is we should better get invaded again, because these invaders, we thank these invaders, they did not complete the job. We should scold them and bring them back and say, you guys came, you invaded us and did so many things for us, but you have to come and do more. So we should send a demand to them to get more. That is what Ram Mohan Roy did. He wrote a letter to the British asking them to come and fix India's education system. And then a decade or two later came this whole Macaulay type people. Indians with the inferiority complex are the ones to blame. So what you have is a very complex vicious circle. You want government to do something, it is very necessary for government to do these things, but then the government is basically reflecting the views of the people. The government is elected by the people. It is not some dictator somewhere who fell from the sky. It is the fault of the people. Either they don't vote at all because they don't have time, or they vote based on emotions or misinformation, and so we end up with a government, and that government perpetuates the inferiority complex of Indians, and then we are dependent on foreigners to solve our problems, and so this is getting worse. So what you need is to revolt against systems that kind of position Indians as inferior, and you want to demand that we need creativity. So the IIT Kharagpur people who invited me to make a keynote address, the students were full in this audience. Not one professor said anything. He just said quietly, because it is protocol, this guy has come from America, they have to be there for protocol reasons. All the Q&A was with students, and when the thing was over, the professors quietly sneaked out from the side. Students stood around me, I was signing my books, and they said, sir, we totally agree with you. This is exam-oriented institution. We are basically passing exams, and then we sit for GRE to go to America, or to get into an MBA program, we sit for this GMAT or whatever. So it is our own exams, and it is the American exams that we are prepared to pass, and so we are measured based on how good we are and what is our ranking in the American exams, so that we can go somewhere else. We are tech coolies. We are not being taught original thinking. We have very little encouragement to really come up with innovation. I asked them, why don't you have an incubator in near Harvard? There's an incubator in New York. There's an incubator, near every major university, because universities are not just teaching; they're also doing research, and graduate students are part of doing research. Around the university, they have these incubators, business incubators, where people with a great idea, some people even drop out of college, they have a great idea, and they finish college. During college, they are developing an idea. There are these business incubators. Now, these are venture capital type of people, angel investing type people. Why don't the billionaires of India go to the top 50 colleges and universities, and next to each of them create an incubator and say, we will encourage with angel funding, we will encourage our young people to stay here, and we will seed them. Why don't they do that? I mean, why aren't the Indian media, who think they're very smart, why don't they demand these kind of things? Why aren't they doing intelligent investigation?
No TRP ratings in it.
Huh?
No TRP ratings in it for them.
So this is the thing. The Indian billionaires are not lifting the weight that they are capable of, that they have funding to do, and it's the Indian population and the Indian public and that have built them up. Otherwise, they would be nobodies. These guys, most of them would not, if they had no money and ended up starting up in the Western world, would not have built up so much. They built up in India because it's a huge market. So they owe something back to the community, and it would be a big deal. Why don't Tata say that in 50 universities we're going to set up incubator, and each university we will put up X 1,000 crores to set up incubator, and we set up 100 ventures per university, 100 spin-off ventures per university. So even if 5, 10, 15 of them become like the next Google or the next WhatsApp, we'll have created something. Why don't they think like that?
Okay.
That's the problem.
Yeah, we'll take one last call, and I have a couple of closing questions, and a very important question. I'm holding it till the last. So the show ends at 2 p.m. and we will be leaving in a hurry. So and therefore it might even end about 5 minutes earlier. We're taking one last call. Hello, caller, you're on air. Go ahead. Hello. Okay, there are no calls, so I think the last caller dropped out. So I wanted to follow on with your being a professor myself in the Macaulay system. Actually, in US there are a lot of incubators. Actually, even our university, George Mason, has incubators they're not doing as well as some. I mean, Silicon Valley has an entirely different culture as opposed. New York has a good culture.
Area, Massachusetts area is not good.
Yeah, I worked there too. I mean, in that area. I mean, I meant to say. It's funny you mentioned that you coined the phrase tech coolies, and I call them glorified clerical jobs. As most of the IT jobs are like that. The product is like you're playing mostly a support role, not necessarily an innovative role by itself. And those who are innovative, they're not risk takers. Not so something like that. The risk and innovation, they have to go together in terms of like. Otherwise, things will not go forward. So, one last comment I wanted to ask you earlier. Wendy Doniger, banning of her book. I mean, basically, you're opposed to that.
Yeah, I think that when you ban a book, you are giving ammunition to the other side to make it prestigious and more important. And because if you ban a movie, everybody want to download it. There was this video that went viral because what was it? This Paris Hilton, some kind of a sex movie about her some years ago, right? Mm-hmm. And so they said ban it, and her PR people wanted to withdraw it, and everybody was tweeting it and forwarding it to each other. So when there is something sensational, exciting, banned, this
gives more publicity.
It gives more publicity. So this negotiation, which they did, I mean, I support the Hindus who did whatever they did in good faith. I mean, I'm not against that, but I'm just trying to tell you what's the consequence, of even acting in good faith. What sometimes the consequence is. So the negotiation they did only asked the Penguin of India to withdraw it, not Penguin of US. It was originally a US book with an Indian edition. So now the US book publisher is going to dump tens of thousands of copies in India, which there is no ban against. And there's no retraction from Wendy Doniger herself. So she's on the radio. She'll probably write more books. So what you've done is you won a small victory. And created an opportunity for a bigger defeat. It is like that. In a game of chess, you've taken a small piece, but you're going to get more fire coming back at you. So I think that the strategic thinking, my approach would be very different. My approach, what I suggested is, I want debate. I want to demand debate. I want the equal time for my book. I don't want Wendy Doniger's book off the air because my book is devastating to her. My book is. If my book had an equal opportunity to be heard and discussed and debated, they cannot answer those questions. So Wendy Doniger I had put a pressure on her, and she was not a very big deal in the American Academy based on after my pressure. She was not able to get students. There were very few people going and working on her under her for a PhD, and in the academic world she was kind of sidelined. She's become like a kind of okay, she's had her time and she's gone, and she was also in semi-retirement. So I had achieved that, not by any ban or anything like that, by putting out very heavy scholarship, pointing out page by page what is wrong with her. And this, of course, scandalized her incompetence. I would rather expose her incompetence. So what happened now is to make a comeback. She could not fight me in the US in terms of debating, and she still won't respond to any calls for debate. So what she did is she got hold of the Indian left. Indian left, and she aligned. Because Indian left needs ammunition against Hindus. And Indian left don't have their own scholars. They don't know Sanskrit.
I'll try to call her on my show, and if she comes and be a surprise caller, and then see what she does. So we have one last question coming from
I would just to close the thought on this issue. I would say that when Hindus are facing an issue against somebody, first you need to get some good top scholars. Like the work I did on Wendy Doniger and various other issues, and on neo-Hinduism. Neo-Hinduism, the next frontier. I want Hindus to help me take on those people. So we need to have someone do the good scholarship, and then what the community should do is popularize that work, read that work, make it mainstream, and ask for the other side to challenge them to come and discuss it. That is putting us on high ground. We are the intellectuals of the world. Our intellectual output is better than theirs, and we want to discuss it. And so, why are we being boycotted from the mainstream media? That is what we should demand, and not that their book be banned. So, I would have fought the battle in a different way, but at the same time, I respect those who did what they did because that is what they chose to do. They have a right to do it. They use the Indian legal system, which everybody has a right to use. They are not to be accused of doing any hanky-panky or any threat. They didn't do that. They are very civilized. They followed the court system, and this is the result that they were able to get. So I respect it.
Okay, one last question from the Facebook, and
the evidence of the Aryan invasion theory, people say the 1500 BC, there are clearly the people who are living there in the agrarian society are different than the people who moved in. And how do you change this? Like in the books of the history, it's all there.
See, there are certain chronologies which people assume. People assume that agrarians become city dwellers. That is an assumption, because that is what happened in the West. Now, we have such a pluralistic system. We could have, it's such a huge continent. India is such a huge continent. You could have many simultaneous groups emerging. You could have a group that picked one model and they wanted to have a kind of a city or model. You could have another group of very intelligent people who live as forest dwellers, who are going the inward journey. Yeah. You could have a composite society where certain people are of a certain type, like we have, certain varna. So people of a certain varna who are going into a certain dimension, they come back once in a while and teach, and so their symbols are also found there. And there are other people who are Vaishyas and other kind of people who are organizing, and they are more, corporate people and business people, and they are creating a harmony. So you can have many. Why is it that all Indians have to be one kind at a given point in time? See, they are assuming that all Indians were type A. Then they had to become type B, all of them. Then all of them had to become type C. So this is the story. This is how they're creating their own story. The Western story is being built like linear. One A leads to B leads to C.
Do they have Sanskrit knowledge?
Of course, they have knowledge.
In the sense, Chandas and everything.
No, the people who are Indologists for the last 200 years have mastered our Sanskrit, but not as practitioners of meditation. So there's Sanskrit that you can read as a text and intellectually, but there is Sanskrit that you can do the mantra idea of embodying it and getting the sense of it as an embodied knowing. That they don't have. So therefore they don't have the correct pronunciation, they don't have the experience. That's why they're not loyal to it, but it's a piece of scholarship. And I call it like a person who's never eaten a certain cuisine, he's read the recipe and he can analyze the recipe. Or a person who doesn't know how to play music, but he's read the notes, he's read the musical notes and he's analyzing it and he become an expert. So they are expert from the outside. We're not expert, it's not an inner experiential expertise. That's the thing.
So we have one last caller. Caller, make it quick, and we are just about to wrap up the show with one last question from me. But first, take the caller. Hello, caller, go ahead.
Hello, hello, Professor Mohan, and namaste, Rajiv ji.
Yes.
Yeah, what's your name and where are you calling from, sir?
This is Hari, and I'm calling you from Bangalore.
Okay.
Question is to Rajiv ji about his grand narrative of India being applied to the Indian society. I work with a lot of counselors, and at least over the last week, half a dozen psychiatrists who teach counseling to us tell me that many psychiatric problems in the urban society of India is due to the Americanization of India. The young people here are sort of trying to take up an American dream to their life, and that's causing that schism is actually causing a lot of psychological stress, and that is leading to a lot of other problems. So my question is, will this grand narrative of India also help us creating an Indian dream? Because we don't seem to have one.
Okay, very good question. Very good question. Gentleman from Bangalore is saying that he has a lot of psychiatrist friends in India, and they're telling him that one of the reasons for a lot of psychological disorders of young people is that they are trying to download an American mind. I'm using my word. He said that they are trying to Americanize India and Americanize their experience in India. And I would say that they are trying to download an app called Let's Be American onto an Indian platform. And then the app is disruptive, and the app is like a virus. It will disrupt the platform, so the platform also becomes an American platform. So, but the hardware is an Indian hardware now running an American platform, and this creates a psychological disorder. I'm just paraphrasing and restating what he just said. That a lot of the psychological problem is because these are Indian people, and they're not really Americans, but they want to pretend to be Americans, and this is creating a lot of psychological disorder. And he wants to know if the Indian grand narrative will also help in this respect and restore some pride and so on. Of course, that is the whole idea. And this business of being mixed up, this business of like under the British times, they would be kind of Indian inside and British outside, and then they would be mixed up inside also. Yeah, and then they would not know who they are. Then some of the people would think we are the British only. We are the Gora Sahab. We are the brown Englishmen here. And all this kind of a thing is based on inferiority complex. So I'm not for isolationism, by the way. I'm for Indians to be very confident using modern technology, engaging the West, speaking English, understanding American history, going to American lifestyle, pop culture, all of that I want Indians to be able to do. But deep inside, you can have an engine which says Indian inside. Okay, you can have a foundation. You can have your deep core be based on our civilization and our Sanskriti. So the Indian narrative has to achieve those kind of things.
Okay, thank you for the call. I have one last question, which is very important for those of us who are Indian Americans. What you say is that HR 417, which has been passed already? No. Okay. HR 417 is in short. It starts something like this: praising India's rich religious diversity and commitment to tolerance and equality, and reaffirming the need to protect the rights and freedoms of religious minorities. So this 2 or 3 pages of a resolution, which is actually, this is not a law per se, it is just a resolution condemning a few things in India which they have no business in doing in here. Sir, go ahead and say what this is and what we can do. Yeah. Those of us who are Indian Americans, who are voters.
Very good point. I'm already working on this. Right?
Yeah.
I'm very personally involved in this, and I'm glad you raised this. Reminded me. HR 417 is a typical result of what I earlier called atrocity literature. So these people have been fed so much atrocity literature, which is self-serving. They are the ones who funded it. The people in India who are funded have supposed to toe the line and come up with some atrocity stories, so they keep doing it. And there's the U.S. Commission on Religious Freedom, which keeps compiling this. There are all kinds of government agencies, church agencies, think tank agencies, left-wing scholars involved. These kind of people have been putting together a massive atrocity literature. And in Europe also, they're passing some laws, they're passing resolutions. So this resolution basically targets Gujarat without naming it. It says there's a major state whose chief minister has committed pogroms, and they has committed all this genocide and Holocaust and violence against minorities. They're referring without naming.
If I may interrupt, who's behind this?
Okay, so this is the same people I have named in Breaking India, the book Breaking India. It is the same nexus. The same people who are involved in Breaking India are also involved in Breaking Modi. This is the Breaking India being manifested itself as the Breaking Modi, because they feel that if Modi were to come to power, he'll expose his Breaking India nexus. He will go back. He'll put us on a Making India project, and this Making India project will be devastating for these Breaking India nexuses. So that being the case, they are fighting this. This is the timing of this is also because of the Indian elections. They want to show the U.S. is against Modi and try to influence the election in India. Now this should be attacked by Indian Americans on many levels. Firstly, you are interfering with another country, which is a democratic country, which we consider to be an American ally. And this is a stupid American policy to do this, because it's going to backfire. If Modi came into power, this is going to backfire against the Americans who have done this, and they'll be eating their words. Right now, they don't want to give him a visa, but then they'll be bending over backwards, begging him to come here, because Modi has got many other important countries to visit before the United States. It's the United States that want him to come here. So, given the corporate interest, American interest, given the military American interest, foreign policy interest in India, to boycott somebody like that would be an absolutely suicidal thing for U.S. policy, and the Americans would never want to do that. So this is a bad idea. It's also wrong ethically and wrong in terms of interference in another country where there's a rule of law. And the Indian Constitution and Indian courts are the ones who decide. It is not the American public opinion, media, and all these nexuses and radicals who decide what is right and what is wrong in India. It is the Indian courts who decide. And the Indian courts have not pronounced Modi guilty. So you can't say that the Indian courts are therefore no good because they didn't do what we wanted them to do. That would be kind of a foreign imperialism or a foreign attempt to colonize India. And every self-respecting Indian American should say, I do not want American interference in India. Because whether a person in India is guilty or not, it's for the Indian courts to decide. I'm not taking a stand for or against Modi, but I'm doing it as a matter of principle for India's sovereignty, India's constitution, India's legal system, and India's legal system has worked on this case after case for 20 years. It's not like nobody has fought cases. So the point is that it is unnecessary interference and it's an insult to India. Now what we can do is we should lobby our local congressmen. We should lobby our local congressmen. We should lobby our local senators. I'm doing that. I've had 4 or 5 people who were previously favoring this who dropped out.
Okay.
I have names of some of these congressmen.
I have the main members of the Congress who are on the list of the names. Even if the name is not in this list, anybody who's an Indian American who votes here, even if you're not, I think you have to be a voter, right? To write to. You have to be a citizen. You have to be a citizen.
But even non-citizens are donating. You're allowed to donate up to a certain amount, so you have to make contributions. So you have a voice, whether you're a citizen, whether you vote or not. The point is they're looking at you for money, and so you have a voice. And even if you don't vote or give money, the point is you have a voice based on what's morally right, based on free speech, based on what is good or bad politics. You have a right to intervene and go against this kind of a very stupid resolution.
Okay, Mr. Pitts, Ellison, Chabot, Conyers, Sensenbrenner, McGovern, Wolf, who is my congressman, Sayers, Meadows, Moran, Hulskamp, Lewis, McCollum, Grilva, Police. These are the sponsors of this bill, and I think we should. You should write to your congressman and then say, this is, whether you are for Modi or against Modi, it is totally irrelevant here, and the idea here is United States has no business in interfering in Indian affairs. And that is a stance that all of us who are Indian Americans should do. And if it adds, ask these guys to tell that you're talking about some killings in Gujarat way back in 2002. Since Newtown, there are 12,000 deaths that happened in this country, gun deaths. And tell the congressman, why didn't they pass a resolution against gun deaths in America?
Why didn't they pass a resolution against Christianity as the civilization of this country? I mean, why are they blaming Hinduism?
Yeah.
And why are they blaming government? And when the courts have exonerated, if you applied the same rationale to the United States, there would be a lot of resolutions here.
Yeah. So with that said, thank you all for the call, for the calls, and thank you for tuning in at the bottom of my heart, and thank you so much, Sir Rajivji, for coming.
And I would like to have internet Kumbh Melas.
Internet Kumbh Melas, and
I want to start internet Kumbh Mela movement.
And I actually might help you on that.
Okay, wonderful.
So I can help. Tharanga can help, and then we'll talk more about it.
Good.
And thank you. And signing off from Washington DC. This is Mohan Venigala, and I will see you in my future broadcast. This show comes every Friday at 12 p.m. Eastern Time, which is going to be about 9:30 p.m. pretty soon in India. 9:30 p.m. every Friday in India, pretty soon. Thank you so much, and ciao. Talk to you later. Bye.